Hi everyone. I thought to myself that it wouldn't really, well, it would make a lot more sense and have a lot more vibe if I shared more photos from the previous tours and also just to add to the vibe. And how did this tour come about actually? Well, I did a series of talks on Dostoevsky's St. Petersburg Oxford of Dostoevsky, of his contemporaries and characters of his of his books. And then Rubinstein Street happens to be part of that city. And Rubinstein Street has hardly changed over the course of these 150 years. And it's the street that we have a lot to remember about, right? And shared memories that we have are absolutely precious. Dolly, thank you so much for the tips, and Holly as well. Thank you so much for your tips. I'm not sure if Holly is here, but saying just in case. So, to just still have the vibe, I'm sharing. I'm starting the tour from the beginning, but we're not going to be given too much time on actually what we have already seen. But just to have this vibe, I'm going to be sharing more photographs of the locations we have seen. So the street is named after Anton Rubinstein, the composer, who together with his brother and musician, virtuoso musician, he started his career and he was just a school kid. And they were, together with his brothers, the founders of the music education, the conservatories. Sharon, thank you so much for the coffees. And Rubinstein Street starts with the Nevsky Avenue and ends with the big Joffe house that you have just seen in the previous photo. We still haven't reached that area, but we will. Trust me. Probably next is going to be the last one of the Rubinstein Street. Speaking of the Nevsky Avenue, well, today we started with the day with the Nevsky Avenue. We're still on the Nevsky Avenue, just a little different area, and well, we are now kind of in the area that used to be just the woods up until the 19th century, with a couple of buildings here and there, but it was just the woods. And then with this amazing breaknecking speed, the city started to develop. And for example, this building, which is still there, looks a little different though. It belonged to the Yusupa family. And this house, the pink one, big one. Looks a bit different. It was rebuilt. Also, it was rebuilt a bit in the 20th century after the Second World War. And well, it's still there. This is the Nevsky. Imagine it was just the wilderness. It was just the woods and the very, very small path in between the trees. And then it became this trams. This is already 1903, 1904. That's approximately when the trams started to run around the city. Before that, it used to be horse-driven carriages. Already we have the electricity, obviously, because we have trams and well, many other things. This house actually exactly here Rubinstein Street begins, and Rubinstein Street kind of starts, and the first building you see, well, kind of if you face Rubinstein Street, this building is right behind your back, but it's there in the photo, and I like this house. Look at this amazing Northern Art Nouveau example. It's one of the mysterious buildings because we don't really know who the architect was, but it is the one of the well-loved buildings in the city. There used to be a big music store. They used to sell pianos here and all the musical instruments. You could even order an organ if you needed. I like the way they put the house number in this interesting way. Lots of whimsical, magical creatures, lots of local flora and fauna depicted on the dark stone facade. So this is the Northern Art Nouveau at its best, clearly coming from Sweden and Finland. That's exactly what it is. And some more photographs that I found on this house from the past century. The house has been restored, however, beautiful tiles, beautiful decorations. Well, swans, yes, we have swans, owls, some magic forest creatures. And so now that house is behind our back and we are facing the Rubenstein Street. And it's not just about the bars, it's just about the vibe, the rebellious vibe of the street from, let's say, nearly the beginning. Again, Just imagine. So, okay, now the street has gazillions of bars, and in the 19th century, St. Petersburg had almost 4,000 bars. Just to compare, at the same time, in London, there were like 3,000 bars with all those pubs that are like hundreds and hundreds years old, right? So, but they're like 3,000, and in St. Petersburg was almost 4,000. This is the photo of the Soviet canteen with the vending machines. So all the food you could buy from there was this kind of a fast food place. It was the Soviet fast food place where all the food and drinks were from the vending machines. That was a big deal. The food was really bad. That's why everyone called the place gastritis, because this type of food will give you a lot of stomach problems. And our lovely favorite Orthodox bar, the entrance is from the backyard, of course. And on the walls, you see the portraits of Russian musicians, writers, poets. My favorite poet, Alexander Blok. We visited his museum together a couple of months ago. Dostoevsky, of course, because he lived in this area, and I'm sure had Orthodox bar been there back in the 19th century, Dostoevsky would have been frequent there. I'm sure he would have loved it. Well, look at this cucumber martini prosecco. Cucumber, it's amazing. So in this Orthodox bar, they would create modern, cocktails with traditional Russian, stuff. It was before the war in Ukraine started. So there's nothing nationalistic about it. It's just, about the legacy, right? About your culture and how you kind of give it a flip, right? So we love that bar together. I love that bar. It was was by far one of my favorite and Oscar's favorite bars. So, and because of the vibe, because I want to start the tour on this vibe, I want to show you these photos again, these postcards, the screenshots, and I want to see those bartenders again. I mean, look at those. Like every bartender in the Orthodox bar are amazing. They were very good. They like just handsome. And look at those infusions. Those are all local infusions. They could be infusion from blackcurrant, cranberry. I think they could make this infusion even from a cheer, and it probably would be good. And I'm drinking some cocktail with honey, lemon, and something else, and I don't remember now. It was very good. Like I'm not a big alcohol drinker. I know I've said this many times, but it used to be even less back in the day. So I would only drink with you on tours, on virtual tours. I actually never drank even with my tourists because I was on the job. I would go with them to the bars, but I normally would never drink. But with you, I did, and it was all also bad Oscar's influence. Who, while he was staying with me, had the black and the red caviar for breakfast every day. Luckily, he didn't stay for too long with me. All the Three Sisters cocktails with tangerines. And actually, this is like infusion, tangerine infusion. Well, very good. Three Sisters because Anton Chekhov. And this is like teeny tiny pine tree cones, sweetened on some kind of pate made from whatnot. And no wonder that after you had all those cocktails, you just accidentally see a horse going down the street. It might be a hallucination though, because you might be already quite drunk, but well, it's not a guarantee. You never know. It's not for certain. And all the entire street, it was full of these tenant houses, right? So this is the house that belonged to the Romanovs. It was actually the property of the Romanovs, Grand Duke Sergei Alexandrovich, and how just he invested in the construction, and this is how he had his passive income. He had his passive income, and the building next to the right hand side from the house is actually the palace where they lived before moving to Moscow, because he was appointed governor general of Moscow together with Yelizaveta, his wife, granddaughter of Queen Victoria. You see all these connections. There's going to be more connections today, like some really wild ones, trust me. So, but yes, I was talking about the bars, the rebellion. So the Saigon bar, there in this area, in this place, starting from the Soviet times, there was opened a hotel. It was called Moskva, and there was a canteen there. And somehow, well, the young people, Moscow hippie, well, St. Petersburg hippies would just, for example, well, would choose this place as one of their, I don't know, favorite place for hangout. And so one day, some men came into the bar, and everyone would smoke there, like they could hardly see anything in the smoke. They say, "Whoa, it looks like a Saigon." It was the times of the war, and this is how the name kind of stuck. And well, that bar is no longer there. There is no hotel, is no longer there, but there is a modern bar called Saigon. It's kind of a homage to the bar. But this house used to have one of the best bars ever after the Orthodox. That is the Kommunalочка, the communal apartment bar. And we visited that bar. It's amazing because it's a combination of a communal apartment and the bar, and the people who run the place, actually those who live in this communal apartment. And yes, up to 70% of up to 70,000 people, not the families but people, still live in the communal apartments in St. Petersburg. This is ridiculous. And this is 19th century apartment. You see clearly the old interiors. Well, this is the part that has been restored. It's not really part of the common apartment, but this is the bar that was placed in one of the rooms. They had sound proof walls and everything. And they had this carpet just like in the Soviet times. People would have this rugs on the walls just to keep it warm and soft or whatever. And this was a bar, and it felt like you are at home, but you're also in a bar, and people you see in the bar you kind of really become like friendly with, just unintentionally. So it was never too loud. It could get loud, and well, in general, Rubinstein Street tends to get loud at night, and people still live there, so it's a little bit tricky. There have been and there still are some tensions, but this bar is already closed, unfortunately. So it's just the memory that we have. And I found some more photos on my camera roll, and yes, they had some chicken there. They were just pets. They were not for food. They were just pets. Thank you, Anne, for the coffee as well, and the balcony. So their balcony overlooking the Nevsky Avenue was, yeah, just amazing, just amazing. Yeah. So also we visited this house. We and this house, well, we saw the beautiful lobby, but it's not about the lobby. The lobby, you can see the recording from the previous tour, but that bar had the best depressive bar. And it was, I mean, the only depressive bar probably, with a very, very depressed bartender with the news and with an interesting cocktail um, with chocolate and whipped cream. And I think it was martini and something else. It was really good. And I couldn't finish it because I was already getting drunk and I had like half a tour to go. And like the bartender never smiled at me. I knew he wanted, but he just couldn't. And this is also where Oscar fell because he had that cocktail too. And it was very strong. And well, this is the teardrop of the socialism house. We spoke about this house on one of the Dostoevsky tours, right? There used to be this house back in the days, the small two-floor building, which was just way too old, so it was torn down, which is sad because it looks really cute. And then they built this early socialist communal, like a not a common, like a commune building. It was built by architect. I never really talked about the architect, so I think it's interesting. Andrei Ol. Andrei Ol, well, he is one of the survivors of those like turbulent times. He started off, he was a student of one of the most renowned Art Nouveau architects, Fyodor Lidval. Well, we will talk about him. And this is well, one of his um what do you call it, like a journals. No, it's like a book where they would, like, you have tests and exams, like a record book where they would put your marks, your scores. So that's just what it was. And also those are the projects that he was working on. And then the revolution happened, and this type of architecture was no longer needed. So this is one of the best Art Nouveau architects of the times. Further Lidwell eventually, he was actually born to a Swedish family, but they lived in Russia, so he was born in St. Petersburg, but to Swedish parents. And then he left after the revolution and continued working in Sweden and Finland. So he left quite a number of architects, and most of them couldn't really find their place in life because they started to be beautiful art to create beautiful Art Nouveau architecture, and then the revolution happened. So, but Andrei Oll, he was very adaptive. Well, further Lidwell, in case you missed my tours of St. Petersburg of Dostoevsky, you may remember my tours of the Art Nouveau Avenue in St. Petersburg. There is an entire avenue that's like 90% of the buildings are from the Art Nouveau period, and that's the house we saw. Well, we actually call it the Lidwell house because Lidwell was a brand. I mean, just have a look at that. It's just a residential building. Well, tenant house, just like most of the, like 90% of the residential buildings in all of St. Petersburg, they used to be tenant houses. Andrei Oll was also an artist, by the way. And he made really good landscapes. He was also very good at country house architecture, but he was very adaptive, and very quickly he just realized he was really, really quick on the draw, and he realized what the tendency was. So he switched very quickly, and he just redeveloped himself. He just basically completely reworked everything he knew, everything he started, and that's the building he came up with. Well, we call it still the teardrop of socialism because it was a really bad experiment. The house didn't really provide any personal space, but I spoke about it on my tours. And on my previous tours, I'm not going to waste too much time on that. But the amazing thing is, so right, the house tried to well, the house was built for the new life, whereas all the other buildings had been just readjusted for the new life. This was the new beginning, and it was meant to be a turning point in the architecture, in the residential architecture, to serve the needs of the modern people of the new country, right? Well, it didn't work, and they had to rebuild it, not from the outside but from the inside, completely, revamp it. Nevertheless, on the upper floor, I mean on the roof, they could actually take sun baths. And also Andrei Oll switched to construction of this small um, kind of the small towns, like neighborhoods, workers' neighborhoods, which look very cozy. This is like 1930s, but it looks cozy. It looks a little bit like like a cottage somewhere, in Europe. Well, yeah, but well, it was interesting. It was definitely a revolution in the residential building architecture, but it just, well, disregarded, completely ignored, just the basic human needs, such as to take a shower every day, but not once a week. And yes, Olga Belgolz, the famous poet and the symbol of the siege of Leningrad, of the survival of this during the siege of Leningrad, she lived in that house too, and she left a lot of memories of the horrible living conditions there. There were no kitchens because the women were no longer maids. No, women just had to work like men, and people just would have their breakfast, lunch, and dinners, at the canteen. Okay, so with this, so now we are standing with our backs to the teardrop of socialism building, and we're looking at the corner. Well, August, it's a cute place. I'm not sure if I had time to talk about it last time, but I will talk about it again because this is an interesting concept. Like this place opened about 10 years ago, and it's well, right now you can find a lot of concept stores, but it's a coffee shop and a jewelry store. and they served very good coffee, and they served unique artisan, jewelry. In just every piece of jewelry is unique. Only one copy of each made, and I like this one very much. So this is the modern one. So Oleg took it for me. I asked him to go and see if the store is. I wasn't even sure that the store was still there. The store is there, and here on this neck, I think it's a bracelet. I'm not sure. It says перемен. It says changes. Our hearts need the changes, right? So this is the kind of form of protest Russian people have nowadays. Nevertheless, the Gods bar to the left, you see, well, this is the famous place where we saw this angel upside down above the bar. Well, I'm sharing this now again. So you see, we're building up this vibe, rebellion, nightlife, yeah, this house. We spoke about it also, but I didn't get the chance to talk about everything I wanted. There is also an interesting story there. Well, you know that now this building, you may remember from the previous, well, about 2 weeks ago. So that is a theater now, like a small drama theater, and it's like one of the best Russian theaters that's used to, tour to Europe, to the States, and well, they would be always a sold out, but this type of theater. Um, well, not anymore but I mean, the theater is still good. It's still there. That's what I know for sure. But originally, the plot of land belonged to the Zhevergeyev family. Zhevergeyevs were merchants. They had several factories. They had also, well, they were also dealt with the supplies of silver, so they owned a plot of land, and then they built this house, like a tenant house. And Zhevergeyevs also owned an apartment there. And Tamara Zhevergeyeva, she was a relative to the Zhevergeyev that was a big art collector. There was a big pattern of arts and a very rich merchant. And Tamara Zhevergeyeva married George Balanchine. And George Balanchine, who was a Georgian born, Georgian Russian, a little bit Soviet ballet dancer, he immigrated to the States together with Tamara Zheva, who was his first wife, but not the last one. And well, she was from this house. She used to live in this house, this very house. And then George Balanchine would divorce from her, marry again, and he would have like 4 wives or something. She would become the actress. She would play in a lot of Hollywood movies. Tamara Jeva would be her name because Jeva was too much for an American ear. For I think every ear, it would be just too much Jeva. So eventually she became Tamara Jeva, and George Balanchine became the founder of the American ballet. Right? Well, we spoke about George Balanchine on one of my tours on the Diaghilev ballet season, so that's why. And it's still a residential building. The theater is very small, so it's just this building. That's all that this theater has. It has a small stage, has a small hall, and it's always sold out. Always. If you want to go to the theater, you need to plan like 6 months ahead. Okay, now maybe it may be different now, but I don't think so because it's not for tourists. I mean, it's only for locals. So, mm, okay, I mean, it's not for foreign visitors. So, but St. Petersburg is still so full of tourists every season. So, and then the small drama theater is also just in the building next to it. And well, this it's just like it used to be also part of the plot that belonged to Zhevergeyev and his art collection, and it's mostly about theatrical art. He was a big patron of arts, and he was very rich, so he had a lot of like unique items in his private collection, and so and he was a big donor also. And well, it's not surprised that he eventually, in his will, left this plot of land for theaters, and the theaters stayed there up until now. I mean, regardless of the political situation, regardless of the of the regime, that's still it. Mm. We've been to this house. There is a restaurant on the second floor. The other three floors are residential, and they just have this beautiful lobby. Just once again, I want you to see this lobby, and it's amazing how opulent, like beautiful lobbies. mm, they kind of a neighbor. Well, they just one and the same house can have the gorgeous lobby. That's our photo from the pandemic time still. We were on a tour together with Misha. And then the same house could have a really horrible backyard. We will see a lot. We will see it a lot on this tour and on some other tours I will be doing, and we have already seen a lot of it. So, but this is how you would go to the restaurant. Now, well, there is a good restaurant that's been working for like 15 years and still there, Dual Asia. It's a really good place. And well, that's the lobby, just like that. But the backyard is really horrible. I mean, they just need to repaint it, but why? Why bother? Nobody sees the backyard but people who already live in the house, so why so? Why bother? No need to bother. Well, okay, so we have spoken about this. We have talked about this house before. There was opened the like a big performance center, and it was all run by the merchants community. There were a lot of children events that were held there during the revolution, well, during the imperial times, and then after the revolution, it still remained kind of a concert hall, and also like a well, some sort of a convention center in a way, on a small scale. Well, kind of. And in the Soviet times, in the late Soviet period, it became the headquarters of the Leningrad Rock Club. On about several weeks ago, I did share with you the story of the Rock of Leningrad Rock Club that was officially opened. It was all done with coordination, well, with KGB because they finally realized it was way easier to allow it and control, right, rather than prohibit and control. So it's the same way the prostitution was legalized in the 19th century in the Russian Empire. It doesn't mean it worked better, it was better, but it was definitely easier to maintain. So this is kind of the memorial plaque to commemorate the rock club uh, establishing. And I even shared with you the story of how in the late Soviet period, this place became so iconic that even, some Americans were able to visit. But I didn't share, well, I shared with you the story of Joanna Stingray, who, well, eventually stayed in Russia for several years, became the girlfriend of one of the icons of the Soviet and Russian rock music. And she was the one who smuggled the records from here to the States and from the States to Russia. Well, you know all the stories, so the recording is still available. That's the backyard where also people who didn't have tickets or who couldn't have tickets because because everything was sold out could actually access the concert. They could do it from the backyard, and that's basically the same. It looked like it's like a concert hall. Imagine having a rock concert at this theater, but that's what it was. But I still didn't share with you one story, and I never really had a chance to share it. So I said that this rock club became iconic, and thanks to Joanna Stingray, I spoke about her, right? Well, several tours ago. So she, thanks her smuggling, the records from Russia to the States, the rock club became really iconic, even among, well, even in the West, well, in the small community, but in the small circle, but it became like widely known in the in the small circles, right? By the way, nowadays there is a children's theater. So Rubenstein Street is not only about bars and eateries, it's also about theaters. One, two, three theaters just in one very small street that is like less than half a mile long. And it's the same hall. So this is the photos from the internet. I have never been, unfortunately, into this theater, never visited it because I was just waiting for Grisha to become old enough to visit, and then that never happened. I mean, Grisha is old enough now, but We are not in St. Petersburg anymore. Yeah. Okay. And but but Oleg was able to visit. I passed this. I passed by so many times, but it never really. I don't know. It never really occurred to me. I could probably just enter and film at least a little bit of the staircase. And this is the old staircase from the from the early 19th century. But it's also the same staircase. You know, all the rock stars of Soviet and Russian music scene also use the same staircase, including the lady in the heart in the ear of the photo in the very center, whom you probably recognize. Misha, Mish, I'm gonna need your help here. Can you help me, please? Do you know who this woman is? Well, I need to ask Misha.
Yoko Ono.
This is Yoko Ono. Can you find someone you know in this picture?
I need to find my glasses first.
Ah, okay. Misha needs his glasses. But actually, in this photo, yes, so definitely you all know Yoko Ono. She visited Leningrad in 1987. But there's someone else that Misha knows. His distant relative. I'm sure he will recognize it. So it's like, it's an interesting story. And Yoko Ono specifically came to Leningrad and she specifically wanted to visit this legendary
Kolya
rock.
Vasin.
Kolya Vasin.
Kolya Vasin created. Kolya Vasin was a Beatlemaniac who created.
He is right above Yoko Ono, the upper.
Yeah, with a beard. He created a temple of John Lennon in his communal apartment, and he wanted to create it in the city, but when he failed, he committed suicide.
Thank you. It's a very uplifting story. Ты Куницкого найдешь Куницкого?
This is my. So this is my.
Скажи, где находится фотография.
On the upper
right hand
with the beard. It was my second cousin.
Red tie.
Yeah, second cousin George Gunitsky. He was poet, playwright, and musical journalist. This man with the curly hair to the right is a bass player of two major rock bands, Kino and Aquarium. Next to him, Boris Grebenshchikov, still band leader of the band Aquarium. The band Aquarium, by the way, was found together with my relative Gunitsky in 1972, and it is still touring. And I visited it a couple of months ago.
Misha was at the concert of the Aquarium band.
And those are the members that.
Yeah, so like all these people are like basically icons of the Soviet rock scene and Russian rock scene. But also imagine for this guy in the very center, in the upper tier, with the mustache and the beard, who was a big Beatlemaniac. He was a big fan of Beatles. Seeing Yoko Ono in flesh in Leningrad, that was something absolutely unbelievable. Yeah, eventually he committed to suicide, but not now. Okay, Misha has something to say.
In the Soviet times, Kolya Vasin sent a letter to John Lennon himself, and John Lennon responded him, sent him one of his LPs, and that LP was immediately destroyed because people were kissing it, was touching it, and it became like an icon or a member of and the matter of
idolatry. It was idolatry.
Yes.
Just imagine for all these people who lived behind the Iron Curtain, all of a sudden, still amidst the Soviet time, yes, the country was like falling into pieces, but it was still the Soviet Union, right? See Yoko Ono, big deal, absolutely big deal. So as I said, she wouldn't have visited just any place. That was the place to visit. So I'm not exaggerating, right? I guess you get it now. The photos are of really bad quality because, well, yes, you know why. Well, here Yoko Ono is talking to Boris Grebenshchikov, the Aquarium band leader, whose concert Misha attended like about 2 months ago, like in December. Yeah, but even that's not the end of the story. Well, actually, Yoko Ono, well, she always wanted to visit Russia because she has connections to Russia. I don't know if you know that Yoko Ono actually has connections to Russia. I'm not sure if Misa even knows that, but she's no longer listening to me. Anyway, so I'm going to share this now because there's no any other opportunity for me to talk about it. So I'm gonna do it now. I don't know if you're familiar with this lady, but well, Joanne, you've just been to Japan, and I'm sure that some of the people you know from Japan, they know of if they are into music, they know of Anna Dmitrievna Bubnova. Oh no, she's a violin player who basically founded the violin music school in 20th century Japan. Okay, that's an interesting story. I told you, interesting connections, like mind-boggling stories. So, okay, so she came from the Bubnova family. Well, Anna Nikolaevna Bubnova. I'm having it here in the text even just to help you, connect the dots because there are so many names, Russian names and all that. So I'm giving you the captions. So this is the mother, Anna Nikolaevna Bubnova, whose maiden name was Wolf, and that was an aristocratic family. So she had three daughters, Maria, Varvara, and Anna. And all the three girls were really gifted in music. And one of them was the virtuoso violin player, like from her early childhood, just like Rubenstein, basically. They spent their summers, by the way, in the beautiful estate, Vernova estate, that belonged to the Wolf family. So they were like pure aristocrats. They even claim to be somehow related to Alexander Pushkin. Well, at least Pushkin had visited, the famous Russian poet, Russian baron, visited their house, but that's not the point, right? The point is there is a museum and everything. It's just kind of giving you the idea. This is how these girls grew up. So they grew up in the uh, Russian Empire, aristocrats, and Anna, so the virtuoso violin player, in 1915, well, she was given a performance. It was like a charity concert uh, mm, in St. Petersburg, and at this concert was present a student from Japan, Shunichi Ono, and he basically, well, in uh fell in love with how Anna played the violin. They well He found a way to get in touch with her, and this is how eventually, so they fell in love. They got married, and after the revolution they escaped to Japan. And in Japan, Anna, well, she was depressed for quite a long time because she couldn't find her place in life, in the completely new setting, in the completely new country, civilization, and you just imagine all that, right? And but she eventually started teaching because the only thing she knew, and she knew really well, was how to play violin. And that's what she did. She played the violin and she started teaching kids to play violin. And that was not really common back in the days. But well, it was just teaching kids music was not really common. But she created that. She just set the trend. And very quickly she became quite a popular violin teacher. And one of the nieces, and her husband, uh, well, he had a niece, and one of his nieces was actually Yoko Ono. Speaking of the other family members, Bubnova family members, uh, they stayed in Leningrad. Then they managed to come to Japan and stayed for quite a while, but then they left, and well, I will I will get to it. So, but everyone was like very talented in this family. And oh, well, the two sisters lived in Japan for quite a while. But yes, so this is the little Yoko Ono who studied violin with the wife of her uncle. And well, Yoko Ono comes from quite an aristocratic family and also is a really well-to-do family. And they would listen to the classical music. And Yoko Ono grew up knowing Russian classical music and a lot about Russian culture because Anna taught her this, right? So I'm just providing you now some side information. And well, this is the Ono family. So they were the siblings to the husband of Anna. So eventually, as I said, the sisters Varvara visited Anna in Japan and actually stayed for quite a while. The other sister left quite early, but Varvara stayed for quite a while. Eventually, all the three sisters moved to Abkhazia, which is now kind of a disputed territory between Russia and Georgia. Sukhumi is the capital, and they lived in Sukhumi till the end. Till they died. Interesting connections, right? It's St. Petersburg, Japan, Yoko Ono, Russian culture, and then Georgia. Well, it's yeah. So interesting, right? So Yoko Ono she just had to come, and that was an interesting thing, right? Just interesting connection. Another house in this street, we visited it. We're going just for a very brief visit for those who missed this tour about several weeks ago. This is the famous Tolstoy house. It's also located on Rubinstein Street, but it's like really big. Just imagine. So it starts with the Rubenstein Street from the right, and it finishes by the Fontanka River. We walked through it. We saw all the courtyards. We saw everything. But this is, again, it's also for the Lidval, right? It's the same architect. It's the same master of Northern or Swedish, Art or Finnish Art Nouveau in St. Petersburg. So this is one of his biggest projects, and he just nailed it completely. Well, unfortunately, he didn't have much time to work in St. Petersburg, but he, he will never be forgotten, that's for sure. But for the biggest part of his life, he actually worked uh, in Sweden. However, what I didn't show you is that, yeah, this is now one of the most expensive pieces of real estate. But who would have thought that actually from the very beginning, this house was really for diversity. Well, because they also had big, expensive apartments and also very, very modest ones. And there's still a lot of communal apartments in this house. It both has really posh, luxurious apartments, like 5 rooms, where some local celebrities live, but also there are communal apartments. Still, about 20% of the apartments in this house are still communal, and that's what it looks. Who would have thought, right? Well, and yes, obviously, whenever I did the tours of, kind of the underbelly of St. Petersburg, the bar street of St. Petersburg, I would always take my tourists there because, yeah, well, this is an interesting courtyard. Teeny tiny, right? It's the same building. And it doesn't look like that, right? Who would have thought? But, well, now you know. We're back to the Rubenstein Street. Yeah, as I said, it's a very, very quick visit. Now, I want to show you something else. You see, there is another bar called Tesla. That's the bar where they serve very rude cocktail. And when I say cocktail, I actually mean cocktail. Okay, I'm sorry for that. So we've seen this photo. It's just a nice addition to the cocktail that they served there. It was delicious, by the way. So it adds to the vibe, right? The rebellious, a little bit of, dodgy business. And, well, here, now there is like a small food cart, the small like a food court with some vans from where they sell like fries, some fast food and everything. Well, Actually, there used to be this house in that area, but this house was wooden, and the bomb fell during the Second World War, and eventually it burned. Obviously, it burned down, and there is nothing still built there, which is amazing. It's like there are very few places in St. Petersburg where there's still, some free space, and nobody's buying it, nobody's doing anything. And technically speaking, from what I understand, you can buy that a plot of land. There's nothing really historic there. There's nothing there. But for some reason, it's just not really working this way. Maybe now you cannot, but at least as of like 3 years ago, you could. Or maybe that's just like too expensive, and I'm not sure. Anyway, so now, yes, Rubenstein Street is the street with the biggest number of bars. There is another bar street in St. Petersburg on Nekrasov Street, and I might take you there. We'll see. We'll see. It just depends on Oleg's availability. But well, this very unassuming avenue, well, not sorry, not avenue, alley, Sherbakov Alley, back in the 19th century, when Rubinstein Street was like thriving, actually this street had the biggest number of bars and taverns. Who would have thought, right? But here, I mean, look at this house. Isn't it gorgeous? It's one of the most opulent buildings, well, in the street for sure, and it's just one of the symbols of St. Petersburg again, right? So we've seen the Tolstoy house. Now look at this. Wow. So we call it just the house with the cordonner, which means like cordonner, like a heart of like a court of honor, right? So the beautiful courtyard, but not the hidden one, not the backyard, but it's here in front of the main facade. And well, the land was extremely expensive, right? And you buy a plot of land and you want to get as much as possible from it, right? It really makes sense. Makes sense. However, there is, well, like you are also limited. Okay, you couldn't back in the days, you couldn't build a skyscraper, right? To make more money. You were limited, in your means and also the technologies, right? But the cordoners were actually a very good solution because the most expensive apartments had to overlook the main street or the court of honor. So had it been just an ordinary building with a one facade, there would be, let's say, 10 to 15 apartments overlooking the street, and the rest will be overlooking the backyard. And this will be already way cheaper. But this, all these apartments, like several dozens of the apartments, they overlook the main street. They look nice, and I mean, oh, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful house, beautiful building. Well, you see the trick now, huh? But we did talk about it. Well, that the facade can be gorgeous. Oh, but the backside of it, not necessarily. And that's what we're going to uh, talk a little bit about, and then we're going to see it in full splendor also on the next tour, which is going to be the final tour of the Rubinstein Street. Well, but in this house used to live Sergei Dovlatov, who is, well, one of the symbols of the Soviet dissident movement. He repeated the fate of many other dissidents, right? Like Brodsky, um, Yevtushenko. I'm not sure if this name actually means anything to you, but for us, it's like a big deal. So Sergei Dovlatov, he was a writer. Uh, well, his mother was Jewish, so he immigrated in 1978. He immigrated to the States, and he died in 1919. Only in the States, only in the States, he actually became famous, and he became famous both there and here. That's his grave. Mm, well, that's why there are stones there, because he was Jewish. He was born to a Jewish mother, and it's interesting that, well, he spent almost his entire life in Rubinstein Street. And only in 2006 there was placed this memorial plaque that looks like a book. And also that in 2013, finally there was placed this monument, and he has a golden nose because people rub it, for good luck. And here is the well, his best friend, the typewriting machine, like the typewriter on Underwood, and like the monument is standing next to a door. You will see that. Well, he lived approximately the same time this photo was taken. That's what it looked during the Soviet times. And that's how it looked during times of Dovlatov. And you see he's standing like in a doorway. And on the door, there is a number, 34, because he lived in the apartment number 34 in this house. But his apartment didn't look anything like what we have just seen. And his windows overlook the courtyard that doesn't look like anywhere near the corridor we have just seen. And it's also interesting that Sergei Dovlatov used to would spend his summers in Tbilisi. And a couple of days ago, Grisha and I it was just a coincidence, happened to be in the area. It's in the downtown, but we're not really frequent there. Uh, and we sat at a cafe and overlooking exactly the house where Sergei Dovlatov used to spend his childhood, in summers. And it's just I thought to myself, well, of course I need to film it and include it in my tour. It's again another interesting connection. But I know, my friends, that we are running out of time, and there's going to be one more tour in 1 hour from now. I don't want to overrun, and I want just to spend some more time with Rishi before he goes to bed to talk about like how his day was and how he feels about the whole day, so his impressions and everything. So, but this is kind of for you to have an idea what actually we are going to see. It's the same archway that takes you from the Cordoner, and then you see really it's just the same. It looks like it's something else, right? But it's the same building. So this is the face of St. Petersburg. Anyway, so let's have the Q&A. You see, I could have technically I could have skipped, some things from the beginning, but I felt I just had to build that vibe. Next tour is not going to be the same. I'm not going to be sharing that. We have something else to talk about and some more memories to indulge to. But as of now, this is it. And hi to everyone else who joined us a little later as well. Hi, Robin, by the way. So I'm not sure if I said hi. Catherine, Maria. So let me know if you have any questions. I've just turned on the chat. And in 1 hour from now, I'll be taking you to the Anichkov Romanov Palace. Oh, well, Anichkov Palace that belonged to the Romanov. And also tomorrow we are doing 3 tours. Grisha's birthday tour, which is also full of content. And this is like everything there is what you haven't seen before in Tbilisi. Just Grisha's take on everything. And my history. Yeah, so I mean, I'll be giving you history, and then the final episode on the Viceroy Palace in Tbilisi and the Armenian Quarter in the Old City of Jerusalem. Thank you those who have already sent your donations. Thank you so much for your tips, and I'm hoping to be sharing the recordings very soon. A couple of the viewers really wanted to join, but they could not, So I'll try to share it like very soon, but nevertheless, the recording will be there. Thank you so much for your interest in the tours. I know that some of you were with me back in 2021 when we did those bar hops with Oscar Bear, well, from Stefan and Catherine from Amsterdam. Some of you maybe new. So, but we had this lovely tradition of a small teddy bear cruising from one guy to another. He was, well, he traveled, he was like a really, really well traveled bear. Thank you, Marilyn. Thank you, Dorley. Thank you. Well, for this video, I shared quite a lot from my camera roll. And when we visit also the Dovlatov apartment, which we're going to start with next weekend, those are also mostly my videos and also my photographs. Oleg filmed like very, very little. But yes, yeah, Oleg also filmed a lot. Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Thank you for your support. Thank you for interest in my tours. And I will see you in 1 hour from now in the Anichkov Palace again on the Nevsky Avenue. Again, but for a very different experience. Bye bye, everyone.